The not enough money, therefore immediate self-suppression doctrine under review. Or what happens when not enough money collides with a stubborn refusal to pretend only one variable exists. Status. Somewhere between I may need to return to regular employment earlier than planned and I'm not entirely convinced that the solution currently being marketed as obvious is actually the intelligent one. Exact coordinates. Approximately 4 months into what was originally intended to be a 1-year period of full operational focus on Chaotic Wise Girl, currently located inside a life system containing decreasing income, increasing uncertainty, children not in full-time school, a work configuration known to progressively drain the organism performing it, a cartoon media ecosystem refusing to remain theoretical, and one increasingly irritating question regarding what constitutes intelligent decision-making. Timestamp. The period in which the not enough money, therefore immediate self-suppression doctrine came under formal review. Current conditions can best be described as like standing on the deck of a boat before sunrise. No visible shoreline, no obvious map, the strange awareness that turning back remains possible, combined with the equally strange awareness that something important may be happening out there. For readers just tuning in, somewhere between sensation, system theory, and a mild administrative incident, there exists a city known as Gothamberg. Researchers remain divided on whether Gothamberg is a real city, a state of mind, or an unusually persistent clerical error. Either way, it is a place where every human problem can allegedly be solved using a checklist, a productivity app, and a sufficiently enthusiastic PowerPoint presentation. The local authorities remain deeply committed to the belief that life would function perfectly if people simply followed the manual correctly. Unfortunately, reality has proven difficult to train. Repeated attempts have yielded disappointing results. This is where Chaotic Wise Girl enters the file. Part field researcher, part cartoon, part highly suspicious witness to modern life. Some reports additionally suggest she may be an extraterrestrial anthropologist conducting an unauthorized study of human civilization. These reports remain unconfirmed though. What is known, however, is that she spends her time investigating what happens when humans stop treating themselves like malfunctioning spreadsheets and start approaching life more like a complex adaptive system. A living thing, messy, contradictory, surprisingly intelligent. The Chaotic Wise Girl's field notes are records from those investigations. Not advice, not instructions, not a 7-step framework, not even a particularly well-behaved body of literature. Merely observations gathered from active expedition into parenting, work, relationships, money, creativity, meaning, and other regions known to contain unusual weather. Some findings remain preliminary, several are currently under review. Many have caused concern within Gothenburg administrative circles. At least one appears to have upset an entire department. Proceed accordingly. Field report. For many years now, I have used what I sometimes call emergent navigation when making decisions, or complex adaptive system thinking, or occasionally, that weird thing where I refuse to make major life decisions while pretending only one variable exists. This approach has gradually worked its way into almost every corner of my life: relationships, parenting, health, family, creativity, meaning, various forms of human chaos. But every city has that one district, the one where different rules seem to apply, the one nobody talks about quite the same way. For me, that district was money, work, and contribution as it relates to earning a living. Those areas remain significantly more vulnerable to the influence of local Gothamberg authorities, particularly one department known internally as ULF. However, approximately 1 year ago, Chaotic Wise Girl headquarters initiated what has since become one of the more ambitious investigations in its history, namely, what happens when the same decision-making framework that had gradually untangled those other areas of life is finally applied to money too. In February, as part of that ongoing investigation, I paused my regular job. The plan was simple: give Chaotic Wise Girl 1 year, a full year. Not a few hours squeezed in around everything else. No keeping one foot permanently attached to the dock. Just enough time to discover what might emerge if serious attention was given to building something different. Recent developments, however, have introduced complications. A previously existing income stream, widely classified under Gothenberg regulations as safe, demonstrated an unexpected ability to stop existing without consulting anyone who had built major life plans around it. This has shortened the original timeline considerably, which means I now find myself facing the possibility of returning to regular work within approximately 2 months, roughly 6 months ahead of the original timeline. At first glance, this appears straightforward. Money decreases, risk increases. Gothamberg immediately opens its emergency binder to page 3. Return to employment. Researchers note that page 1 and 2 appear to contain the exact same recommendation. And yet, a curious finding emerged during the investigation. Since pausing regular employment, the organism in question, me, has been observed to display sustained work behavior from approximately 6 a.m. until late evening on most days. This development created several administrative challenges, primarily because Gothenberg had spent years insisting that organisms left unsupervised were expected to drift, collapse, procrastinate, and eventually become one with the couch. Instead, this organism had started building a media ecosystem at industrial intensity. Preliminary findings from the field. Several observations now appear difficult to ignore. The organism is working more, not less. However, the organism is feeling more alive, not less. The organism is also producing more, not less. This does not automatically mean every decision made during the experiment has been correct, nor does it mean the experiment is guaranteed to become economically successful. But it does complicate a number of previously accepted assumptions, particularly the theory that effort is primarily produced by coercion. Current findings suggest that aliveness may also play a role. Gothamberg response. Gothamberg remains largely unimpressed by these findings. Their current position is roughly, The original 12-month chaotic wise girl runway may be shortened. Therefore, the experiment has failed. Ulf was immediately available for comment. His position remains: return to regular employment. And perhaps spend less time producing TikTok videos about a chaotic cartoon entity that currently generates nowhere near enough income to justify the amount of attention being allocated to it. This recommendation has been further strengthened by the observation that cartoon field researcher remains a category with limited representation on most conventional CVs. To be fair, this is not an unreasonable recommendation. Money matters. Food continues demanding payment. Housing remains stubbornly capitalist. And uncertainty has not become less uncertain simply because chaotic wise girl finds it narratively interesting. From Gothamberg's perspective, the situation appears obvious. A plan is no longer unfolding exactly as expected. Therefore, the plan failed. Case closed. Chaotic wise girl interpretation. Chaotic wise girl responded to Gothamberg's interpretation by making several deeply irritating points, including the now controversial claim that returning immediately to previous depletion structures solely because insufficient money appeared may itself constitute a fundamentally unintelligent system response. At this stage, multiple Gothenburg authorities began clutching pearls preventatively, particularly after chaotic wise girl clarified that not enough money and therefore immediately suppress all other variables and system signals may not actually represent advanced adult intelligence. Unfortunately for Gothenburg, several additional variables continued existing. The spiral kids, for example, remain only partially in school. After approximately 7 years of educational trench warfare, the current arrangement is finally working for the actual children involved. This creates a small administrative complication, namely, children who are not in school full-time continue requiring an adult when they are home. Researchers therefore note that returning to work does not actually mean returning to unrestricted full-time employment, unless one intends to solve the problem by simply ignoring the children, a strategy not currently under consideration. Further review of the available options revealed an additional curiosity. Even full-time employment does not by itself fully resolve the economic equation. Returning to partial employment would therefore resolve it even less. At this stage, several Gothenburg departments requested that everyone stop making the situation more complicated. Reality declined. Further complicating matters, previous investigations indicate that the organism in question displays a strong tendency to progressively lose vitality under certain conventional employment configurations. Not immediately, not dramatically, more like a houseplant placed in increasingly poor lighting. Functional, technically alive, but visibly less itself with each passing month. At this stage, investigators briefly believed all relevant variables had finally been identified. This optimism proved premature. Further review revealed yet another variable refusing to leave the room, namely, future earning potential. Because, while chaotic wise girl is not currently producing sufficient income, the possibility remains that continued development could eventually alter that situation. No guarantees have been issued, though. Reality remains under no contractual obligation to cooperate. Nevertheless, researchers note that humans routinely allocate resources toward uncertain future outcomes. This practice appears particularly common when the activity in question is labeled education, training, professional development, business investment, retirement savings. Curiously, the same logic often becomes substantially less popular when applied to creative projects involving cartoons. In either case, Chaotic Wise Girl continues insisting that if one wishes to understand the system, all relevant variables must be permitted to remain in the room, even when they make the decision substantially less convenient. Emergent hypotheses. Under conditions of uncertainty, Gothamberg's preferred coping strategy appears to involve removing variables until certainty returns. Chaotic Wise Girl now suspects this may occasionally be mistaken for intelligence. A decision can appear dramatically easier the moment enough reality has been removed from it. This creates what researchers refer to as the administrative illusion of clarity, a condition in which a situation appears obvious primarily because most of the situation has been excluded from consideration. Further investigation is required, particularly by those currently attempting to solve complex life problems using only one variable and a concerning amount of confidence. Differential diagnosis. Alternative explanations remain under active investigation. Possibilities include: Chaotic Wise Girl has mistaken uncertainty for philosophy. The human counterpart is simply procrastinating creatively. Sea air has impaired judgment despite no actual sea being present. The cartoon has become overconfident. Or everyone involved just needs a nap. No definite ruling has yet been issued. Non-binding conclusion. Current best estimate. The situation is genuinely not obvious, which is irritating, particularly because obvious answers are so much easier to announce dramatically. Further observation is recommended. For fellow spiral souls, if you have ever found yourself facing a situation that became less obvious the more honestly you looked at it, not necessarily around work, but perhaps around relationships, parenting, health, leaving, staying, creating, or any other territory where multiple realities insist on being true at the same time, you may already be familiar with a phenomenon Gothamberg finds deeply inconvenient. The moment when a simple answer begins losing its simplicity. Not because the situation became more complicated, but because more of the situation became visible. Sometimes the pressure does not come from the complexity itself. Sometimes it comes from the demand to remove enough variables for certainty to return. Chaotic Wise Girl remains unconvinced. This always represents progress. Researchers note that what appears to be confusion in such situations may be something else entirely. The slow and somewhat irritating process of allowing reality back into the room. Chaotic Wise Girl headquarters status. Investigation ongoing. Decision pending. Coffee reserves adequate. Several Gothamberg departments remain concerned. Chaotic Wise Girl headquarters appears cautiously optimistic. Filed under complex adaptive systems, emergent navigation, money, work, Gothamberg, Ulf, and reality's continued refusal to follow the original spreadsheet.